she was once the most photographed woman on the planet. A face that launched 1,000 magazine covers, a voice that commanded every room she entered, and a name that made Hollywood stop and stare. Sophia Loren. The very sound of it carries glamour, fire, and old-world elegance. But today, as she crosses the threshold of 90 years old, the world that adored her has grown quieter. The red carpets are empty. The set lights have dimmed. The man she loved for over 50 years is long gone. And behind the walls of a private home in Switzerland, one of cinema's last true legends is living a life that, when you really look at it, carries a sadness that no award, no legacy, and no applause can fully erase. This is not a story about failure. This is not a story about bitterness. It is something far more difficult to watch. It is the story of a woman who gave everything to the world, and now finds herself navigating her final chapter mostly alone, mostly in silence, carrying the weight of losses that began long before the cameras ever found her. Stay with us, because what Sophia Loren's life looks like today may surprise you, and it may break your heart just a little. Before she was Sophia Loren, before the Oscar, before the standing ovations, before the Armani gowns and the Cannes Film Festival, she was Sophia Loren, a skinny, wide-eyed little girl born in 1934 in a charity ward for unwed mothers in Rome. Not welcomed into the world, not celebrated, simply born. Her father, Riccardo Ciccolone, refused to marry her mother. He offered nothing, no name, no warmth, no support. And in a deeply conservative Italian society where a child born out of wedlock was marked from birth, little Sophia carried that rejection like a second skin. Her classmates called her Toothpick. She was mocked for her sharp nose, her thin frame, her too big eyes. The schoolyard, like the home she never quite had, was another place where she did not fully belong. But it was the absence of her father that left the deepest mark. According to multiple accounts and her own reflections over the years, Sophia met her father only 3 times in her entire life, at age 5, again at 17, and finally at his deathbed in 1976. Their connection, she described, was cold and unfulfilling. In a rare moment of vulnerability, she once admitted she wished she'd had a different father, one who offered love, presence, and safety. He never did, and that void no amount of global fame could ever completely fill. This is where the sadness of Sophia Loren's story begins, not at 90, but at 0. The rejection written into her very first breath. Wartime Italy did not spare the weak. And for a young girl already carrying the wound of abandonment, the Second World War delivered another layer of trauma that Sophia has never truly shaken off. In Pozzuoli, a battered coastal town outside Naples, Sophia and her family were displaced by the constant Allied bombing of the harbor and the nearby munitions plant. They did not flee to comfort, they fled to survival. For nearly 8 months, her family lived inside a tunnel, surrounded by rubble, rats, and the sound of bombs overhead. Food was scarce to the point of fantasy. Her mother, Romilda, once tried to feed her lentils mashed in radiator water, a desperate act that nearly ended the child's life before it had properly begun. There was also the shrapnel. During one Allied air raid, as young Sophia ran for shelter, she was struck, wounded in the chin, a scar she carried for life. Not metaphorically, literally. War left its mark on her face. In interviews as recently as 2024, Sophia has reflected on those years with a clarity that suggests the fear never fully left. The cold, the hunger, the uncertainty, they didn't just build character. They built a woman who never felt entirely safe, never fully trusted that good things would last. And looking at how her life eventually unfolded, you begin to understand why. Because every time peace arrived, loss was never far behind. Her mother, Romilda, a former beauty queen and piano teacher whose own dreams had been crushed by circumstance, saw in her daughter what the world had not yet recognized. She began entering the teenage Sophia into beauty pageants, dressing her in gowns sewn from curtain fabric, traveling by train from Pozzuoli to Naples and later Rome, chasing the future she believed her daughter deserved. At 15, Sophia participated in her first pageant, the Queen of the Sea, in Naples. She didn't win, but she won something more important. She was noticed. By 1951, at just 17 years old, She caught the eye of Carlo Ponti, an established Italian film producer 22 years her senior. He saw something in her, not just beauty, but an almost electrical screen presence that he believed could conquer cinema. Under his guidance, Sophia Loren became Sophia Loren. He gave her acting lessons, found her roles, shaped her image, and helped her refuse the relentless pressure from Hollywood to surgically alter her face to fit their narrow beauty standards. When a cameraman once called her impossible to photograph, her nose too long, her mouth too wide, Sophia's response was legendary. "If you're suggesting I need to slice off a piece of my nose to make movies, I'll go back to Pozzuoli." She didn't go back. She went forward, and the world followed. In 1962, she became the first actress in history to win an Academy Award for Best Actress in a Foreign Language Film for her devastating performance in Two Women, a role that drew directly from the wartime suffering she had lived as a child. The girl who had hidden in tunnels was now standing on the world's greatest stage, holding its highest honor. It looked like triumph, and it was. But triumph, for Sophia Loren, always came wrapped in something complicated. Of all the losses in Sophia Loren's life, none defines her current reality more than the loss of Carlo Ponti. Their love story is one of the most dramatic and complicated in the history of cinema, and it left behind a loneliness that Sophia herself has described in heartbreaking terms. When they met, Ponti was already married. Italian law at the time did not permit divorce, which meant their relationship was immediately scandalous. The Vatican threatened excommunication. The Italian government charged Ponti with bigamy and Loren with concubinage. The couple fled their home country, lived in legal exile for years, and were eventually forced to seek French citizenship just to be able to legally marry, which they finally did in 1966 in Paris. Sophia once recalled that during what should have been a honeymoon period, she spent hours weeping, not from joy, but from the persecution that surrounded their love. They had wanted something simple, to be together, to be a family. The world had made that feel like a crime, but they endured, and their marriage lasted until January 10, 2007, when Carlo Ponti died in a Geneva hospital from pulmonary complications, at the age of 94. Sophia was at his bedside. What she has said since then is almost unbearable in its honesty. "I was very sad when my husband died, because you can never get over this kind of feeling. Never. Each time you think about it, there's a moment of the loneliness, which is very strong. But that's life," the list she told AARP. And, to Vanity Fair, she was even simpler. "It doesn't get any easier. I miss Carlo very much, my husband." Ponti was not just her husband. He was, as she has described him, her father figure, her mentor, her creative partner, her anchor. "What Carlo gave me were the tools to believe in myself. He showed me that I could make my dreams come true. We were partners in love, in family, and in work. I don't want to think of my life without him in it." The list, and yet, she has had to every single day for nearly 2 decades now. As if personal heartbreak were not enough, Sophia Loren also faced the kind of public humiliation that would have destroyed lesser people. In 1982, she was convicted of tax evasion, stemming from a 1963 tax return that her financial advisor had allegedly mishandled. The advisor was dead by the time the case resurfaced. Sophia had no one to defend her, no way to correct what had happened. She was sentenced to 30 days in prison, later reduced to 17. She entered Pozzuoli's women's prison, the very same town where she had once hidden from bombs, impeccably dressed, head held high. "I am worried, very worried," she admitted to reporters. And it was perhaps the most human she had ever publicly appeared. Not the Oscar winner, not the icon, just a woman walking into a prison cell for something she did not knowingly do. Her fellow inmates taped her pictures to the walls with handwritten notes reading "Pardon Sophia." Even in humiliation, she inspired love. But the experience was deeply scarring. A forced collision between the polished image she had spent a lifetime building and the brutal reality of a justice system that showed no mercy. She served her time. She walked out. She never publicly collapsed. But those who know her story understand. That kind of injustice doesn't just pass. It settles somewhere deep and stays. In September 2023, just days after celebrating her 89th birthday, Sophia Loren suffered a serious fall at her home in Geneva, Switzerland, fracturing her hip and thigh bones. She required emergency surgery, followed by months of rehabilitation. Remind magazine. Through her agent, she released a statement. "I thank everyone for the closeness and affection that they are showing me. I am better, just have to do rehabilitation and give myself a period of rest." Rolling Stone. It was a gentle, dignified message. But for those who read between the lines, it was also a sobering one. Here was a woman who had survived bombs, poverty, prison, and profound grief, now brought low by a fall in her own bedroom. The body, at 89, does not forgive the way it once did. By May 2024, she was photographed having lunch with friends at Cipriani in West Hollywood, smiling, wearing stylish glasses and a leopard print blazer, making her way to her vehicle with the help of a walking stick. Yahoo! The image was both reassuring and quietly heartbreaking. There she was, still elegant, still present, but visibly diminished from the woman who once commanded the world's attention without assistance. She had already been largely inactive since the life ahead in 2020. The fall made that quietness more permanent, more fragile. After turning 90 in September 2024, Loren dismissed rumors about her retirement and expressed hopes to star in new productions. Wikipedia, that is Sophia, refusing to surrender, refusing to be invisible. As recently as March 2025, she shared a heartfelt message on her official social media, expressing gratitude for the love and support she continues to receive from fans worldwide. Dead scan. But the reality of her daily life tells a quieter story. She is based primarily in Switzerland and has been since 2006. Wikipedia, her sons, Carlo Jr., now an acclaimed conductor, and Eduardo, a filmmaker, have their own families and lives. She travels occasionally to spend time with them. IMDb, but the home she shares now is one defined by absence more than presence. The art, the memories, the ghost of a man she loved for 50 years. She once told AARP, "When I look in the mirror, I cheer for myself. I don't ask, are you great or are you beautiful? No, it's how I feel inside, how secure I am, how happy I am." Yahoo! There is beauty in that. But there is also loneliness quietly tucked behind it, the loneliness of a woman who has outlived her era, her peers, her partner, and most of the world that once knew her name by heart. She has 4 grandchildren. She has her sons. She has her memories, her films, her legacy. And yet, the person who knew her best, who believed in her before anyone else, who walked beside her through scandal and exile and triumph and grief, has been gone for nearly 18 years. There is a particular kind of sadness that comes not from failure, but from survival, from outlasting, from being the last one still standing in a world that has fundamentally changed around you. Sophia Loren has outlasted her era. The golden age of Hollywood, the directors, the co-stars, the studio system that shaped her, is gone. Vittorio De Sica is gone. Marcello Mastroianni is gone. Cary Grant is gone. Carlo Ponti is gone. Her mother Romilda, who sacrificed everything for her daughter's future, died in 1991. And Sophia, who was born with nothing, who rebuilt herself from rubble and ridicule into something extraordinary, now sits at 90 in a private home in Switzerland, largely removed from the noise that once defined her existence. That is not a tragedy in the conventional sense. She is not suffering in poverty. She is not forgotten, far from it. But there's something quietly devastating about a life this full, this remarkable, this hard one, arriving at a place of such profound stillness, of walking with a cane through a restaurant where people still stare, still recognize, still photograph, but no longer truly know the weight of everything those eyes have seen. She once said, "There is a fountain of youth. It is your mind, your talents, the creativity you bring to your life and the lives of people you love." She still believes it. She still holds on. Sophia Loren at 90 is not a cautionary tale. She is not a symbol of tragedy. She is something more complicated and more human than that. She is proof that a life fully lived is not necessarily a life free from sadness. That the greatest love stories end in loss. That the strongest women still feel the loneliness. that survival is not the same as peace. She came into this world in a charity ward, rejected and unnamed. She clawed her way to the very top of everything the world had to offer. She loved deeply and lost profoundly. She stood in a prison doorway, fashionably dressed. Heartbreaking. She fell in her bathroom at 89, got back up, and went for lunch with friends 8 months later. That is Sophia Loren. And if her life at 90 carries sadness, it is the kind of sadness that also carries extraordinary beauty. The beauty of a woman who never, not once, gave up on herself. If this story moved you, please take a moment to like this video, share it with someone who needs to hear it, and subscribe for more untold stories of the legends who shaped our world. There is another incredible story waiting for you on screen right now. We will see you there.